are living in very unprecedented and strange times. But despite the shocking health and economic consequences of the pandemic, I believe personally that India is at a cusp of a very major socio-economic transformation, probably not evidenced in our generation. This is on the back of several things happening together, whether it is some structural reforms, one mega structural reforms, fiscal and liquidity support, geopolitical equations changing, and a lot of other, I would say, fiscal and liquidity support to the industry and to the sectors which needed that. So, having said that, let me say that the last 3 months we have seen already a very good recovery, starting with August, and September and October has been phenomenally good. And if you look at the purchasing managers index in the month of October, it has risen to 58, which is probably the highest in the last 1 decade. So manufacturing in general is bouncing back, and automotive sector accounts for almost 48%, almost half of the manufacturing sector in India. So obviously, this is on the back of a very major recovery in the automotive sector, whether it is passenger vehicles, two-wheelers, and even light commercial vehicles are showing good green shoots already. I would say the commercial vehicles industry in particular has not shown that kind of a recovery as such now. But of course, we believe that if I have to take a step back and talk a little bit about commercial vehicle industry, so number one, it is always very closely correlated with the GDP growth. And the second, if I have to trace back from FY15 to FY90, this industry grew at almost 70% in aggregate over these 4-year period. And in FY20, it degrew by almost 40%. So even before COVID, this industry was showing moderation in growth. In fact, it was showing negative growth because of several reasons: axle loads and a lot of GST and BS4 and BS6 coming in. So many things were happening. So, but this industry is likely to end this current financial year at about 25% lower than last year. But we believe that the commercial vehicle industry will come back with a growth of about 40% in the next financial year, which is April 21 to March 22. So that's something which we believe is going to be there. We have no doubt lost a quarter, but the pace is picking up. Construction, mining, and e-commerce increase in government contracts is leading the return of demand. The rural sector was already doing well thanks to a good monsoon and agriculture performance. And the segments which are clearly seeing an upswing are LCV, trucks like the tipper trucks for the mining and construction segment. So these are showing a very, very good return. So as I said, next year would be a return to a high double digit, about 40%, 35 to 40%. But how do I look at the automotive industry in the future? I think the automotive industry is going to be reshaped going forward by digitalization, by disruptive technologies, and by a new transport system and a totally new ecosystem which will define the mobility going forward. So I think, having said that, what are the challenges in the commercial vehicle industry currently? So I think number one is the logistics efficiency. This has to come up to speed. So that's something which is currently a laggard. Financing, the retail finance was a short-term issue and has been an issue because the financiers have been worried about delinquencies following the pandemic. And I think especially the small and single owner fleet operators. So to my mind, those are some of the concerns, but I think these concerns will get taken care of with time as the virtuous cycle of economic growth take place. And as I said in the beginning, that the that the commercial vehicle industry is very closely aligned to the GDP growth. Once manufacturing starts at the pace at which it is showing over the last few months, I think this will be seen very clearly in the growth of the commercial vehicle industry. Public transport, which is the bus industry, is still at a very low level compared to the gone year as a result of social distancing requirements, people not wanting to travel by public transport, work from home, schools and colleges still not open. So I think these are the things, but this is, to my mind, a great time for building capacity in public transport to meet social distancing norms, because while at the same time most of our cities are starving for good and efficient public transport, this is the time to act. The good thing is that government continues to focus on it, and I think there are number of new technologies which are going to also come and reshape the automotive industry. Electromobility, electric vehicles is one very clear thing, and we are talking of battery electric vehicles. We are talking of hydrogen cell electric vehicles, which would be there more in heavy segment of commercial industry, commercial vehicles. So I think these are going to be some of the things, but I think safety, emissions, and brand perception is going to be the key to future when it comes to the automotive industry. And customer relationships and total life cycle experience with which the customer has is going to be also one of the keys. The typical routes which most customers use to buy commercial vehicles are a high value, high engagement activity, like word of mouth, testimonials, demonstrations, proof of new concepts, customer meets and events. And I think with the digital technology adoption, the aim is to enrich this relationship with the customer. To my mind, the scrappage policy which is likely to come of vehicles which are older than 15 years can also become a huge driver. So to my mind, the automotive industry and commercial vehicle industry will see a growth here at least the next 2 years, 18 months to 24 months. We personally see a good growth after a lower base, especially in commercial vehicle industry, and a bounce back in the passenger vehicle industry with more and more people wanting private transport and also even going for used vehicles. And we are seeing that trend coming up in a very good. I will stop there.
एबीपी न्यूज आपको रखे आगे।
I think I heard Mr. Bali, and he's absolutely right the way the things are panning out. But let me, obviously, Gulf oil lubricants is related to the auto industry. It is a consumable which is used, and our consumption and demand is directly related to what is happening both in the replacement and the new automobile industry. I think some of the things that we are seeing around us in terms of the new automobile sale, I would like to start with that and then try to relate it to some of the trends we are seeing related to what we sell and again the auto industry. Definitely everybody is saying that the industry is going to be down 25-30% because of the pandemic, and I would say the recession is the theme, but this is one of the recessions none of us have seen before. We have seen various cycles of demand in all our industries over so many years, but this is really a unique situation. So my first thing is that yes, there is a bit of clouds. The growth is being forecasted will be around minus 25-30%. But the last 2 to 3 months, if you are, and all of you know the data that is coming in on new vehicle sale, both in the passenger car, the two-wheelers, and even commercial vehicles, but more importantly, the passenger car and two-wheelers, where large numbers are there now. We have seen that October over September and October over last year. In fact, in cars, you're looking at 10 to 15%, and month on month, there's a 8 to 10% increase in the new vehicle sale. And I would say that this trend, where you see a pent up demand and return towards normalcy, is really what is happening in the last few months. So that really goes well. Along with this, the economic activity levels, the fuel consumption, the new registrations, transportation indexes, all are moving up and picking up. One of the other trends we have noticed, obviously to do with the behavioral aspect of everybody, is that personal mobility has actually taken a front seat. Nobody wants to have shared mobility. People are worried about that. And though shared mobility will come back, but we see that both in urban and rural, whether it's cars, bikes, people are moving out their vehicles, people are buying vehicles, people are buying bikes. So that safety factor and actually being in a bubble within the vehicles, whether it's a car going for a drive or it's going for work, whether you're in a sector where it's opened up. So there is a definite need for personal mobility, which will drive sales, and we are seeing that the Dussehra season and other things. I would say that where we are 90% replacement sales for our lubricants, the levels of demand have come back for various players, and I will explain some of the reasons why. And it's compared to last year now, where the last 2-3 months the levels are, in fact, there is growth happening. But certainly we have seen different sectors grow differently, and that is what every marketeer will look at: the segments you play in and what segment is responding. Entry level cars, bikes. So you'll have to look at various. I think Mr. Bali also mentioned that he's seeing an uplift in mining and heavy, and probably the lower end of the LCVs and other mid-level vehicles. So you will see that in every segment as a marketeer. So you have to be very, very, very sharp in your demand sensing. Initially, when the lockdown happened, we were looking at green zones, orange zones, and opening up markets. Of course, for us, the agri sector and the auto sector picked up. Then you had two-wheelers. So our lubricant demand also panned out in terms of demand sensing. So we have to change ourselves to be really having efficient surveys, feedback, our own customer behavior, new segments we want to get in. So you'll have to sense your demand and really play your moves and cards in that direction. So that's an important trend which all of us should look at. And really, growth shoots have emerged. I would say there's a positive sentiment around what we are seeing in the last 2 months. So I think going forward, the theme should be to be optimistic but cautiously, because COVID is still there. We don't know with the second wave in European countries and Western world is happening. And really, if you look at our sector, the automotive sector, I think demand sensing across, I mentioned, is going to be a key driver. And really, that's going to be, we can move on to the next slide, actually. Sorry, Siddharth. The next slide, I think, is, I finished this slide. Can we move on to the next slide? Yeah. So if you see, I've covered this part. And let me give an example of what we did. We actually saw the agri market picking up right from May. And April also we had to supply, because there was a demand for food. And so essential services. And this is really what happened to us. And you can relate this to the examples of what all of you as marketeers and CEOs are looking at. So how do you sense this demand? We had various crack teams panning out the green zoning, orange zoning. Then we went sector-wise. We knew what was coming, and we were able to look at that. And the first and most important thing that we did, and all of you are doing, is the rhythm of supply chain. I think a lot of industry leaders have recommended. So if you've got your rhythm of your supply chain going, sensing the demand, then you are there. Then you are really going to be in a state where you can, bring that and make your offers very simple. And, I think if you have a network and a brand and these things going for you, you need to have, of course, financial backup. We are seeing some of the smaller players are getting marginalized. Finance is very important for auto industry, so we should have that. And if you're a reliable, trustworthy factor in terms of your network and brand, this is key. And even in our industry, we have seen the larger players, the more established organized players are doing well, those who have been able to respond. Lot of the consultants and lot of teams, as you also have been talking about the 4R theory. A lot of the big consultants, rightly so, have put resolve, resilience, return, and reimagine. So I think in phase 2, as we are today, we need to reimagine things. Digitization is a no-brainer. I would say digitization is the new A&P. If you're going to deploy A&P investment, it has to be in digitization. And various organizations are different levels, being with the consumer, understanding him, staying relevant to him. And I think the most important thing is how do you connect to the different consumer groups you are dealing with. That is important. We are doing some flash surveys. We're talking to our, virtual also gives you the benefit of talking to 1,000 dealers at the same time, talking and taking Q&As, and your own team. So you have to stay alive. You have to be clearly focused on your consumer, whoever is impacting your dealers, your employees. I don't normally we don't propagate very long meetings, but good meetings which are effective, short, and relevant. And really, involvement is the key here all around. So I think these are the important so-called trends and things that we have done.
एबीपी न्यूज आपको रखे आगे।
There has been a good bounce back, actually, considering that there was absolutely zero sales in April because of the lockdown. Things started getting month on month, and you would have seen May better than April, June better than May, so on and so forth. And October was actually the best month in terms of sales ever in the history of Indian auto industry. So that's a fairly sharp recovery. And in the initial months, surely the bounce back has been seen largely in the rural areas. And we have a situation where, we keep saying this, that Bharat is leading India. But of course, Bharat can't carry India, because overall in the industry, about 80% of the sale does come from urban areas. We have seen a good bounce back in urban areas also very recently. As Manohar was pointing out, there is approximately a 10% difference in growth rates between the urban and the rural areas, rural leading. As a result, for our portfolio, 40% sale now is rural. First-time buyers, as I indicated earlier, have gone up. Again, as Manohar was saying, probably it's a little higher for Maruti Suzuki. In fact, just as a matter of statistics, which will clearly make that point, among the first-time buyers in the industry, Maruti's market share is close to 60%. Whereas overall industry, we are close to 50%, which means that our share in the first-time buyers is large. So yes, we do find that these new pockets by geography and also by the buyer type have increased. And I would say that this has given us a new angle for our marketing spends and our marketing efforts, because these are some shifts. And even if it's not irreversible, even if some of them are irreversible, we will need to have take into account for our marketing push going forward. And I think we will clearly do that. Hatches, for example, increase dramatically because of this shift. And there have been, of course, people, the other panelists have pointed out how the public transport, people have become a little averse to public transport and shared mobility, leading therefore to more personal mobility sort of helps us. The other thing which is clearly coming out is in times of stress times like these, people do try to, shift to the more reliable brands, the more known brands, something which is an advantageous for some of the market leaders like Maruti Suzuki, and we have seen it. The other thing which I think Guleria Saab pointed out a little bit was about finance. Yes, there has been post-lockdown probably an expectation of lower incomes, probably a loss of business for some people, even loss of employment for many others. But I think there is therefore a demand for very specialized financing schemes, and that's what we are trying to work out with the banks, giving us a good leg up. So I think going forward, marketers, and that's true for Maruti Suzuki as well, we have to be careful of what the consumer really wants under the new scenario. And one of the things which is clearly coming out is not about the requirement of financing itself, the requirement of different type of financing, but also different type of buying types. Like subscription is something which we are seeing in great demand. We started subscription as a way of keeping asset light purchase of cars. So it's like not purchasing the car, but yet having the usage for it. And I think those things will. The other point I wanted to quickly make, Noor, is that some of us pointed out about the digitalization and digital thing. And I keep saying in this panel discussion, actually, we have analyzed the whole buying process of cars. So there are 26 touch points across the buying journey of a consumer. Like the time when he starts thinking about a car, getting a pro forma invoice, doing a research and so on. Of the 26 points, just before the COVID, we had 21 points which were digitalized, like brochure downloading or getting pro forma invoice. The others were like finance, Others were like finance, 4 points. 1 point was test drive, and 1 point was delivery. Now, finance, we have still incorporated, thanks to the COVID thing and the requirement, we have now put it on the digital platform. So now 2 points remain, which are physical, which is test drive and actual delivery of the car, which I suppose will remain and has been seen across all parts of the world, even in the more advanced economies, Japan or US, etc., Europe. The physical part still will be very important because it's a very involved purchase. It's something which is, the whole family gets involved in the purchase of the car. It's probably the second largest ticket item that you buy during your lifetime, at least in India. So these are the reasons why we say it will be a phygital world or in automobile for a very, very long time. And even though consumers are researching more in digital frame, 94% of them actually, as per the latest reports, and about 47% have actually made up their mind which product.
Did we lose him, or is it me?
No, I think it's the bandwidth.
Yeah.
Yeah, the new normal.
New abnormal. I lost power a few minutes ago. I think Mr. Srivastava, I'm not sure if he knows that. However, still, I think you wanted to ask Mr. Iyer the same question. Probably Mr. Iyer can begin while we're waiting for.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Iyer, the luxury segment is a little different. The luxury segment has been seeing a lot of demand from tier 2 cities, right? Cities like Kanpur and even Chandigarh, they have seen a lot of demand. I mean, metros are up there, but there's fresh demand from these cities as well.
No, so, one, it's a percentage story also. As somebody, I think Manohar pointed out, when the base is low, definitely when you calculate metro versus non-metro and tier 2, tier 3, if they sold 5 cars a month in the past, now doing 10 cars is a 100% growth, and percentage basis, definitely it has a bigger impact. But yes, we can see that they are slowly compensating for the slow start of the metros, because metros, we had lockdowns phases 2.0 to 5.0, and it keeps going on. Also earlier, many cities like Bombay, for example, Pune, these were not having a set pattern. So they took a bit more time to recover. In fact, last month we have seen almost all markets recovering, except maybe Kerala and others, where they are still, back into lockdown mode after the festive season, etc. Maybe a second wave or some stuff. But this is where these tier 2 markets are coming back, and what we see is also the spending pattern. Earlier, these consumers in these markets were very averse to luxury because, I have a large home, people in the city know me, I don't need maybe a luxury car as such, and maybe I can do with some of those plates that I use. It's more of a going from point A to point B. But as these smaller markets, so-called smaller, and when I'm saying it's not Chandigarh, but maybe the Raipur or Guwahati and many other markets, these markets are also big cities now, and it's no longer that somebody would know that this guy is a wealthy businessman in that city. So even Aurangabad, for example, or many other such markets. So that's the reason they also want to enjoy luxury. Their kids have gone abroad, studied, come back, and now they want similar lifestyle, similar spends. So this is where we see a growth in coming from some of these markets. Our first online sale was from Rajkot, even for used cars, for example, because not only new cars, because they never had access. Many of the used car, our dealers are in metros, used cars availability is in metros, but we see a very big push. Customers can see and check out the used cars online in some of these markets, and then they can book also when it's from the manufacturer, because what we have done is we have given an e-commerce platform. The platform is by Roadster from US, and the dealers are hosting, putting their inventory there, their pricing there, their discounts there. So this is a very unique setup, and that's why we see a very big traction for e-commerce also from some of these smaller markets. The other fine example I can say is the accessories business. We have this boutique collections and accessories. We do close to 5 to 6 crores as such, in a month, in a quarter. And here, this business is growing manifold because there is a big aspiration to own the 3-pointed star. It can be a cap, maybe a keychain, or maybe even a small model car. And for us, this is a very good way to open up the brand. And in the future, we feel someone themselves or their family members will buy into our car. So there we again see a very big spurt coming from these smaller markets, smaller cities, all going online, buying these merchandise items or boutique items. So that's something as an insight into the luxury segment.
All right,
Great, sir.
perfect. Let's just kind of look at all that all of you have spoken about. Shashank, sir, just before he was going away, he said in October it was the highest ever in the history of the sector in India. Mr. Bhatt has talked about his great experiences. Plus, his cars have really become something to reckon with already. Similar have come from Vivek as well, from Mr. Guleria as well. And of course, Mr. Singh has given us an overview. However, what I want to understand right now is this enough to offset? Now, even before the pandemic was happening, arguably the auto sector was undergoing stress, and there were inventory was still getting blocked, etc., and then the pandemic happened. Now, all these that you have spoken about right now, the trends plus what is happening on ground, is it enough to offset the strain that this sector was seeing in the last 12 months? Who wants to take it first? Show of hand, and I'll go after you. Otherwise, I will choose, and then my tendency. Mr. Valeria.
Okay, because we have limited time, so okay, I said okay, I will start. And yeah, it's a very good question. I think it's very difficult for anyone of us to really put our money on saying that we are back. This is one odd month because everybody is quite optimist about, because India has opened in Unlock 5.0. Almost 100% of all our network is now open, and we have the 2 days of festival still pending, which is Dhanteras and Diwali. And 2 days already gone, Durga Puja and Dussehra. So all our stakes are on these 2 days, and we have worked very hard to maximize the potential and opportunity which this festival is going to provide, because we are back on a good monsoon, and the harvest expected of the Kharif is also good. So rural plus urban opening up, so we have built up the stock. So let us not confuse this wholesale with sales, right? Even though I'm from a manufacturer side, this is building up of the stock to maximize the retail, which is expected to happen on Dhanteras and Diwali. Only after Diwali we can say where we are and whether this demand is sustainable in the market. So we need to be cautiously optimistic about this. And if this is not your question, I just quickly take this, what Rajiv Singh from Deloitte mentioned about influencer marketing. I think we need to open a lot of educational schools now, because everybody want to be influencer. What I see that any new model launch, there are many people who come to a showroom with a spy camera and they are talking in their mask about the product, and then they upload their videos on the YouTube as if they are reviewing the product, and then they want to have likes that if I cross 1,000, I've got 3,000 followers, and some manufacturer will come and make me money that I have become an influencer. So please, this is a new business which anybody can start. It is a good startup idea how to make the influencer for India market.
Influencers, there are also micro influencers, but some of them really do help actually. Shashank sir is here, so I would request if he can come on screen. In the meanwhile, I would request Vivek if you could take that on as well. Mr. Guleria gave us a perspective from his sense, but the point that this high rise of Shashank sir, everybody was just weighing in that we've spoken about so many awesome things about what's happening, and the figure that you mentioned, October, huge recovery, a sharp increase rather. And now Vivek was going to answer the question on whether this is enough to offset the strain that the sector was seeing even before pre-COVID and then, due to COVID. Is it enough to offset that? Vivek, all the best.
So I'll talk specifically about Tata Motors, and it's a positive answer from me. I think the surge in demand that we have seen post unlock has been increasing month upon month. It has kind of peaked in October, and we hope that it's going to further peak in the months ahead. But all economic indicators and also the flow of demand seem to be that we'll have even stronger months going ahead. Of course, the 2 Ds, as Guleria Saab said, is still ahead of us, and we also have a strong Q4. We hear that agricultural output is also going to be very strong this year. So that element of the market definitely will kick in. The other factor also, which is going to be, we believe, a crucial influencer is this reverse urbanization that has happened. A lot of people have gone back and started really getting back into agriculture, or even started their own small firms in the villages. The knock-on effect we'll have is now that manufacturing sector, especially automotive, has really started off. I think employment is really back with the bang, and all this I think will really make the coming months very robust. But I believe so far in October itself, the demand has been very strong. There has been a lot of demand for the demand, especially what we've seen for Tata Motors, has kind of made up for the loss of the Q1, and we hope it will get stronger going ahead.
All right. Excluding Rajiv sir right now, does anybody disagree with Vivek that the next few months is going to be like robust growth? Anybody disagrees? So nobody disagrees with him. Awesome. Rajiv ji, coming to you. Manoj sir has a
I don't know why was it.
I would like to disagree.
Yeah.
Manoj sir, up?
Yeah, even Mr. Bhatt was disagreeing.
Oh, so
Yeah, I
Bhatt
mean,
is-
yeah. No, what
How
I
is
was trying to get at is, we have had a very good October. We had record almost 25,000 retail. So my retail actually more than my wholesale. And I think November also the trend ought to keep up because I got enough bookings and enough customer payments coming in. But having said that, traditionally or typically your automobile sales, I'm talking about the industry as a whole, automobile sales depends very much on the GDP growth and on the purchasing power increase of the customer. So the moot point now is actually, it is a forecast that we'll be losing around 9%, will be minus 9% growth in this financial year. So it basically means that if you grow at around say 7-8%, the economy GDP will be back to what it was in the beginning of 2019 only after 1.5 years. So would that be good enough to give us a very good growth in the auto industry? I'm not very sure. I believe the overall numbers of the industry might not really come back to what it was in 2019 for another 1.5-2 years. That is my, that's what mathematical logic would say. That's what your economical analysis, I think, would say. So we are seeing a couple of good months. It could be because of pent-up demand, even though I hope I'm wrong.
All right, Shashank sir, you had a point of view, and then Rajiv ji, I'm going to come at you as soon as Shashank sir is done.
Yeah, so I think what Vivek was mentioning regarding the good months of October, coming good months, I think if you go by the booking trends and the inquiry trends, we can be reasonably sure that the next couple of months will be good. I think that is a point which we can agree, I think, with all data suggesting. But as Manohar was saying, going forward, the long-term steady-state demand in auto industry is very closely correlated with the GDP per capita income growth. And that is a question mark. And I think while we may be cruising, as Vivek is cruising at with a lot of tailwinds at the moment, our radar is pointing that there could be air pockets and a little bit of choppiness going ahead. And while Vivek, I think, is moving in a different aircraft, but we are in the same skies. So it is possible that we will have a little bit of uncertainty going forward. The reason is, and I completely agree with Manohar, that nobody can really be sure. And I missed a part of the discussion about Guleria ji's D1, D2. But for us, it is clearly one. It's a very involved and a very it's a purchase which is discretionary. The car purchase is a discretionary purchase, requires a good GDP growth, and ultimately the correlation with the GDP growth is actually 0.9837, which is pretty strong. And therefore, without knowing how the economy will move, it may be difficult to predict going forward. Second is that it is also because it's discretionary, the sentiment has to be good. And sentiment at the moment is a little bit clouded by the COVID uncertainty. And we keep talking, therefore, about COVID. There can be a vaccine upside. There can be a virus downside. We really don't know. And therefore, going forward, as we get closer and away from December, closer to the year end, we might actually get to know a better of where we'll end the year by. By the way, for the financial year so far, Noor, for the financial year so far, the industry has lost about 391,000 units as compared with last year. So I think making up that large number might be a little, a little difficult if you go by what the data is suggesting. We probably end up, that's what I wanted to say.
I got it. You're saying it's Rajiv ji, if you want to weigh in, what a big number, 391,000. May I expect that at least in the next 1 year, somewhere we would be talking about this great resurgence of the auto sector. But Rajiv ji, do you want to quickly weigh in on this? We're on the last couple of minutes. I have one question for all of you with a show of hands. But Rajiv ji, once you explain, I'll ask my question.
Yeah, so see, as I completely agree with Shashank, it's very, very difficult to predict how the next few months are going to be with a lot of uncertainties. We don't know when the wave two, when the wave three is going to hit, which part of the country it is going to hit. But given that it is there going around the world, in Europe, in US, and so on and so forth, so we just need to be planning for that uncertainty somewhere. Now, our analysis, whatever we did, I know that Guleria said that, yeah, consultants do come with a lot of analysis and so on, indicated that, see, passenger vehicles, as Shashank said, it's very difficult, or it's difficult, not very, but it's difficult for passenger vehicles to cover up for the first 2-3 months of loss that happened in this year. Hopefully, by 31st of March, if passenger vehicles can be, say, minus 10% to somewhere between minus 20% of last year's numbers, I think we should just pat ourselves, because to achieve that number, I think that the passenger vehicle will have to either do the same numbers that we did month on month last year or slightly more than that. Which means that for not just the last 3 months or 4 months that we have done more than last month or previous year, same month, but we need to continue to do that for the next 5 months in this particular financial year to ensure that we are anywhere between minus 10 to minus 20 overall for the YTD numbers. But from a two-wheeler perspective, okay, from a two-wheeler perspective, we believe that this number could also be positive, because there is really a real demand coming up, especially because of people moving away from shared mobility more towards personal mobility, and two-wheelers being the most affordable in that hierarchy. We are finding that the demand for two-wheelers could be higher. So it could be anywhere in the range of -5 to +5. The worst hit, and we don't have today anyone representing, I know Vivek is here, but he's representing passenger vehicles, of course, but representing commercial vehicles, the toughest challenge is going to be for the CV players. The CV players are really looking down the barrel. They are probably likely to look at a number of about -20 to -25%, especially in the medium and heavy commercial vehicles. The light commercial vehicles probably will not be that badly impacted, given that the intercity movement has gone up. The intracity within the city movement has gone up because of e-commerce and other things. But the heavy and the medium commercial vehicles are going to be badly impacted. So that's what the overall view is. It's very difficult to pinpoint a single number, so it'll all be ranges depending on what scenarios emerge. Sorry,
I got it. It's all right. I must point over here. We had Kamal Bali from the Volvo Group earlier today, but he was very, very positive. I have to say he was a little bit more positive than some of you right now in terms of how the sector will bounce back. I need to do a show of hands wala question with all of you. Please, aap apne haath raise karenge. In comparison to 2019, will your 2021 ad spend be higher or higher? That's it. One question. How many of you raise your hand if your budget is going to be higher in 2021 in comparison to 2019? Okay, how many of you will be on same budget? You're on.
Can I make that question a little easier so people's hands will go up?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I mean, let's look at it that Q1, Q2, forget about that, because Q1 was really, nobody knew. We hit the train. So let's talk of the H2, which is the period September to March. Would our spends be higher or lower than last year? If that is the question, then I would say mine will be higher.
Come on, guys, be inspired.
Now all agencies are going to be like Maruti now.
The modes of marketing are changing. So rather than spending on what people used to spend in 2019, people will of course do more of marketing, but I think they will be more smarter in terms of where do they want to spend. And it could be more of marketing.
The digital base is so small. The money that they spend on digital in comparison to some of the very nice people were telling me earlier in this conversation. I think it was Guleria ji who said that print is coming back 120 pages. Our magazine is also like 200 pages sometimes. We are on stands, by the way. That money versus digital, there is a zameen asman ka farak sometimes in our country. So we are already under indexed. You're going to make it tough, guys. But that's okay.
A crisis demands more marketing, right? I'm sure everybody is cutting budgets, but a crisis demands more marketing.
But they will do it on things like digital and this digital world and 100% sales, vagara experiences, hopefully. All right, gentlemen, you have
one point. Maybe I would also like to say more marketing doesn't mean more budgets, and I think budgets and reaching reaching out to consumers are not necessarily always correlational. So you can find, as somebody, I think Rajiv mentioned, smarter ways to reach consumers. Because on other side, we also need to remember there's a huge cost pressure because with
Sir,
this
you
current
have right
situation,
now.
we have also seen costs.
I hope we are not suggesting to the digital agencies to jack up their prices, because we are finding they are very